Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Alfred Music's webinar series, Learn, Teach, Play Online. My name is Michaela Graham, Senior Event Specialist for Alfred Music, and I'll be running everything in the background for our session today. We are thrilled to host today's webinar, Maximizing Student Engagement and Musicianship in Today's Choral Ensembles, even during COVID. Before we get started, I have just a couple of housekeeping notes for you. At the end of the webinar, we will provide a link to the certificate of attendance for today's session. Please note the certificate of attendance will only be available for live attendees and not for the replay. If you have any questions for our presenter throughout the session, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. We love hearing your thoughts throughout the presentation, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of the session. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful presenter today. Dr. Russell Robinson is the Emeritus Professor of Music Education at the University of Florida and has made over 300 appearances as a conductor, speaker, consultant, and presenter at prestigious events all around the world. Dr. Robinson was the 2016 inductee into the Florida Music Educators Association Hall of Fame and is a past president of FMEA, Associate Dean of the UF College of the Arts, National Collegiate Chair, and Choral Advisor for the National Association for Music Education. Dr. Robinson is a published author, composer, and arranger with over 500 publications in print, and you can find more info at his website, russellrobinson.com. Dr. Robinson, thank you so much for being here with us today. I will let you take it away.
Welcome everybody, and I think you'll know what we're talking about as we go through. It's all about student engagement and musicianship. Those go hand in hand. So if it's okay with you, Michaela, I'm going to do screen share and get going. This is the title. I've been doing these a long time under various titles. I probably have said the same thing many times, but in different ways. I see people from all over the country, and maybe you have met me before at a conference, or maybe I've conducted a choir in your school or whatever. And so I think these are strategies for success. I have a section on COVID, teaching in COVID, and you all have been living that since for about 14 months now. And all of us have, but I think things are getting better. I know some of you are probably in class teaching, some of you are still on remote, and some of you are hybrid. But we'll get to all that in a little bit. So I want to start running this, and here's kind of getting to know you. Kind of looks like maybe some of your students. I don't know. I've kind of got middle school. I've got elementary and with mass. This one here is our Africa choir that I started with Duncan Miana Wambugu many years ago when I recruited him into the doctorate program, and it's still going alive and well doing the music of Africa, Eastern and Southern Africa. Okay, so ready or not, here they come, right? And they look a little like this or this or this. Schools are an interesting place, aren't they? Like that one. I love this picture. You know why? Because that's middle school. It's got to be middle school. And I love middle school. Some people think that I'm still stuck in middle school, but this picture is interesting, isn't it? I mean, if he was in elementary, he would be able to get his head out. If he was in senior high, he couldn't get his head in. And look how many people it takes to get through this problem. So maybe you can relate with that. Schools sometimes have to fix things like this one over here. What in the world happened? What do we do now? And have you ever felt like this? Probably. So how do we maximize musicianship and student engagement? And again, these go hand in hand. They're not really separate. If you're going to have great musicianship, you have to have engagement in the students. What this has is 5 strategies that you can use. The other day I thought, I probably could have made this 3 or 4, but and it's what I call real stuff, no fluff. I don't talk in esoteric terms. I talk Just like I talk with a middle school choir, I'm going to talk to them in their terms so they can understand. And just like you, I'm going to talk to you in terms you understand. And if you don't understand something, write a question, or if you have further things you want to talk about. But I've worked with a lot of schools. I've been an international consultant in American schools around the world. Just in fall of 2019, I was in Taiwan and Chengdu, China, and Hong Kong, and the spring before that in Central America, and before that in South America and South Africa and Africa, whatever. But I observe a lot of classrooms, and I do a lot of what we call on-site professional development. I also do it here in the States. And I watch whether students are engaged or not and analyze why that happened. And so that's what we're going to talk about. I hope it helps you, because you should be able to just take it back to the classroom. And I think this is what great teachers do. I want you to reflect on the great teacher you had, if you had one, the great music teacher, hopefully. So I would imagine that they did this kind of thing. They maximized musicianship and student engagement. And then you can think about the others. Why in the world? Some of you didn't have good music teachers. I know I can name one in high school that, oh boy, I got through it. But, and that's not a happy place. So the first one is be musician educators. I've changed my title from music educator to musician educator. My wife and I have started 3 musician educator scholarships in music education programs to identify good musicians in music education. I think you have to be a good musician. Now, are you still going to be able to play or sing like you did 20 years ago? Probably not, but I still am an active musician. And then you have to know how to teach. So that's kind of our job, to teach you how to teach in college. And in 32 years at the university, I had a lot of real rock stars come through the program. Choirs, they'll never be better musically than their music teacher. That's kind of a scary thought, isn't it? If you see or hear a great choir, and I did my last festival at Disney on March 14th. They came back in the green room. We had 3 choirs drop out that day, and they said, guess what? We're closing the park tonight, and it's not going to open for a while. But I love those festivals because I get to see 30 choirs in a weekend. And I watched them come in on the stage. I listened to them perform. I work with them in a clinic. And it's amazing sometimes how a high school choir can sound, like one of the best college choirs I've ever heard. And then some high school choirs can sound not that good. And middle school and elementary, if they're engaged in making music and have a great teacher, great. But then there are some that, I guess the end of this is will never be better musically than their music teacher unless the teacher's awful. That's kind of putting it in plain terms. But I've seen choirs where they were singing better than what they were being directed. And I know it's none of you online. You wouldn't be here if you weren't a great musician educator. But have high musical expectations and behavioral expectations. How do they come in the room? How do they leave the rehearsal? How do they come into Zoom? How do they leave Zoom? Are they, and high musical expectations. Why? Because they won't be exceeded. You set the bar high and get close, you're going to be fine. You ever feel like this? Yeah, probably in the last 14 months, you've had some feelings like that. Great musician educators do great music. You can't make great music out of bad music, and only you can decide that. But one of the reasons I got into writing, particularly middle school madrigals and middle school classics for middle school and then high school, was, and when I started writing it, this is before most of you were born, in 1993, there was a lot of stuff out there. So I decided I wanted to write music that makes kids look smart and sound smart. Kids of all ages, make that elementary through college. I always say, teaching college, it's a lot like middle school. The basics are still the same. They're just middle school and bigger bodies a lot of times. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you're at a college choir that it's going to be great. It's going to be great if you've got a good conductor. So this is the biggest reinforcer we have. You know what makes kids feel good? Doing good music and doing it well. Simple music does not necessarily mean bad music. I love some simple music, things that they can learn quickly. Complex music, complicated music doesn't mean it's good music. Now, if it takes longer than 3 or 4 weeks to learn, that's fine. But if it takes all year to learn, it may not be the piece for your choir. And all of you have done that. We've all, ordered a piece that we wanted to do and gone, you know what? This is just not going to do it. New music is not necessarily good music. I've got new music coming out every year. I think it's good, but I hear a lot of new music that it's not good because it's new. And old traditional tried and true are not necessarily bad. Sometimes we need to go back to that corpus of music that have been around for a long time. That's why I love writing classics. They've stood the test of time for hundreds of years. Good music's good music. It's worth doing, and it makes students happy. I like happy students. Happy students are students that are engaged in making good music. It's worth the effort. Now, this is one that I wasn't brought up this way. I was kind of brought up old school. I love my parents. They're both gone now. But when I was in school, it was like sit down, sit up, do this, blah, blah, blah. They didn't look for what's right. And I like to catch kids being good. I call that accurate reinforcement. And that's what we're going to talk next about, practicing accurate reinforcement and correction. That's the way to a happy life. Okay, not only in music, but it's also a good happy way to a happy life with your friends, your relationships. Avoid reinforcement error. What is reinforcement error? That's when you say, "Oh, that was so good," and 2/3 of the choir didn't sing it right yet. The 2/3 that are singing it wrong are going to go, "I guess I'm good," and it's tough. But the key to that for me, and I've been doing this a long time, and I'm still learning. I'm still on the learning curve. Is finding someone that's doing it right next to someone who's doing it wrong. Let's take for example posture. You can't sing without good posture, whether you're sitting or standing. It's about breathing. Plus, it makes you look interested. So you've got one that just doesn't want to sit up straight, just wants to slouch and our first thing would be to correct that behavior right now. Well, that's not my first intention. My first thing I'm going to do is find somebody near that student, very near that student, and say, you know what, Brittany, I love the way you're standing in choir today. I love the way you're making those vowels so wonderful and pure. And at least 75% of the time, it's going to fix the problem next to Brittany. So this positive reinforcement, accurate reinforcement works. It's proven. Tell them what they need to correct. Don't be afraid to tell them what they need to correct and how to correct it in terms they understand. Not just, I want you to sing with a more beautiful phrase. Well, no, I want you to get that crescendo to go 4 beats this time instead of just all at once. Use of student models is reinforced. This is a new one for me. I say new one in the last 8 or 10 years with choirs. You know how sometimes in a piece, measures 9 through 16, you hear 2/3 of the choir not singing it correctly and 1/3 of the choir, or something. You hear it right. There's some people in there doing it right, and then you hear a lot or some that are doing it wrong. Try this tomorrow or the next day. How many of you can sing measures 9 to 16 correctly? Okay, hands go up. Right in middle school, hands go up, and they didn't even hear what the question was. They just volunteered. Right. No, how many of you can really sing measures 9 through 16 correctly? Have them stand up or have the others sit down and have them sing it. All of a sudden, they're going to be honest about this. The 2/3 that aren't singing it correctly are going to go, wow, you just made accurate reinforcement, and you haven't reinforced the inappropriate behavior of not singing that right. Get the idea? So what happens is punishment can become reinforcing to some kids. If you, I mean, you know this in school, you get kids that are professionals of getting you off track, but you've got to be able to avoid that for a while, or take them in the office, talk to them, whatever. But always look for always try. This works so beautifully because it's a motivator for the rest of the class to do it correctly. It's the only way to change behaviors in humans. Okay, is accurate reinforcement and accurate correction. I don't use punishment because I don't like punishment. I like accurate reinforcement. Reinforce those appropriate behaviors, those positive behaviors, those good behaviors, whether it's musical or behavioral, and just avoid the rest unless you have to, every once in a while you have to just tell them. But when you correct something, this is not an emotional thing. You correct it and get on. So you change, and also domesticated animals. You don't give a dog a biscuit if it bites your leg, right? What's going to happen? It's just going to keep biting your leg. So when they approximate the behavior, they're sitting up, biscuit. All right, I call it giving those kids that are doing it, those singers that are doing it, giving them cookies. They deserve verbal recognition. That's a shame on that one. I think John Lennon's right, was right. It reminds me of the people that think they're tone deaf. Well, why do you think you're tone deaf? Well, my music teacher told me that because I couldn't match pitch. Well, maybe the music teacher didn't match your pitch. But nobody's tone deaf unless everybody can sing on a pitch. It may be a pitch that they like better than the one you're giving to them, unless there's a physical problem within the ears or the vocal cords. Okay. So, that's another thing. If they need to like music more when they walk out of rehearsal than they did when they came in. That's what my good friend Tim Seelig calls the buzz in the hall. You want the best recruiter is? The best recruiter in music is the buzz in the hall when the kids get out of rehearsal. Pacing. Keep the class moving. I'm trying to make an example for you. Am I keeping it moving? Huh? Am I keeping it moving? Okay. Pacing. Keep the class moving. Not one thing too long. Okay? Maximizing engagement requires effective teaching, learning, changing behaviors. You cannot just go. I've been in some classrooms, never in yours, of course, but where nothing happens actively that's teaching music for 15, 20 minutes. Or they do one thing. They do that measures 9 through 16 for 20 minutes. They're not in it anymore. You got to keep it going. Attitudes follow behavior. Behavior does not follow attitudes. It follows behavior. What does that mean? If they're doing the right thing, they feel good about themselves and they like music and they like you and they feel great. Okay. They have a great attitude. Think about those ones. Some of you that thought about the music teacher or somebody you had that really wasn't, didn't either didn't have their heart in it or skill in it. What was that morale like? Now look at the ones that did it and really grabbed a hold of you. Look at what that morale was like. Aristotle, we are what we I've had this on my wall for years. I had to get my glasses so I can read it. Excellence is an art won by training and habit. We do not act rightly because we have virtue or excellence, but we rather have those because we have acted rightly. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an art, it's a habit. So we make a habit out of doing the right thing. We feel good about ourselves, right? So, bus comes by and you walk in front of it, you're not going to feel good about yourself. All right. If behaviors are correct, attitudes and morale will be high. That's a given. You have them acting right, behaving right, musical behaviors, good vowels, good diction, good dynamics, text accents. I mean, there's so much to work on in every rehearsal, but don't work on one thing too long. You have to have a lower threshold for boredom than your students. Keep it moving. I've always had that in my head. It's like sometimes people think I'm stuck in concrete operations in middle school because I know, you can see it in their eye. when it's time to move on. And that's why you need to have that peripheral vision view. Yeah, I've done some warm-up things for Alfred and other publishers, but I've got the complete choral warm-up book. It's hard to believe that's been out for 25 years, but it's 211 warm-ups by the dozen, set 1, warm-ups by the dozen, set 2. How long should a warm-up be in a typical 50-minute rehearsal? You answer that question to yourself. See if you can guess what I say. 7 minutes. Why 7 minutes? Because it's not 20 minutes or 30 minutes. A quick pedagogical, quick warm up, and then get to the music. I'm going to just show you what I do. It's been what I've been doing for years. My sequence of warm ups, in which there can be 100 of these in each category. But a physical warm up, just to get them in the room. I'm not going to do that for you. Warm down on an oo vowel. So we might do it here, where you have no, 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 higher here, no, no, no. Got the idea? Why do I start with the oo vowel? Because everybody can sing a good oo vowel. Everybody can sing a good every vowel, but naturally we don't really mess up the oo vowel unless it gets no, but no with a nice space. And then I go to 1 3 5 3 1 or so mi, do mi so mi do on the other vowels, and this is my sequence always: nu, ni, no, ne, na, no, ni, no, ne, na. Okay, you keep the oo on the lips. This is going to fix a lot of those e's and ahs. So then something like this. I've got this on some stop on my electric piano. Would you rather have piano? I think I would. Nu, ni, no, ne, na. Or let's put it here for me. Nu, ni, no, ne, na. And then go up. Nu, ni, no, ne, na. Nu, ni, no, ne, na. And I want to put one thing about physical. Nu, ni, no, nu, ni, no. Especially in middle school or even in high school, they want to stretch. A lot of people want to stretch. Nu, ni, no, ne. No, 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 no. You must come down on notes. You can't reach for notes or you'll never get them. Same thing on no, 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 no. I even have them sometimes sit. No, 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 no. Okay. And then tongue twisters, a diction thing of diction is done with the tip of the tongue and the teeth, or I just want to sing today and sing correctly all the way because to sing correctly is the way to sing. Or I got another one. I'm not reading these, by the way. I'm looking over at myself. I don't know. If you see the sea go swirling, then you shouldn't eat the seaweed. See the seaweed in the sheets. Excuse me. If you see the sea go swirling, then you shouldn't eat the seaweed. See the seaweed in the sea will hit the seashore. When you see it swirling in the sea, that might take a while. But something like diction is done with the tip of the tongue, teeth, or zingamama, whatever. And then a chordal warm up. This is all in 7 minutes, by the way. That's why you might need something. You can't think of new warm ups every day. But you might have I'm going to do 12 and 14, 15 out of this book or whatever. But a chordal warm up. So I'm imagining I'm in an SAB choir, let's say, and I'm going to do a 1-4-1-5-1. So the baritone, with that same sequence, and then it will come out. Anyway. And then make sure the last warm-up's in the key of the first piece. Oh my goodness. I've done a lot of instrumental groups too, and they'll end up with their scales and arpeggios in E flat, and the first piece is in A major. Whoops. So whatever the key is of your first piece, end your last warm-up with that. Warm-ups lead into how to make it. I think I did in 7 minutes. They're not the rehearsal itself. Teach in terms they understand. Specific examples. Dynamics. The difference between piano and forte. That would be nice, wouldn't it? And I say that because I hear a lot of choirs sometimes that go from mezzo forte to forte, or mezzo piano to mezzo forte, and they go from piano to mezzo piano. But we should be able to explore the whole dynamic range. And let me talk about forte. Never, triple forte to me is 85% of full volume. That's, it's like your voice is going to distort, just like your stereo. Real crescendos and decrescendos, right? I've seen people conduct a choir and back up. If it's a whole note, 1, 2, 3, 4, because if you don't hear it, they didn't do it. Don't imagine anything. Listen to what they're doing. What's a phrase? Rather than saying, I want you to sing that with a better phrase, put it in physical terms that they will understand. I say a lot, or something like this, all notes crescendo to the next note or rest, unless the conductor tells you something different. Okay. So if it's not in the music, all long notes should slightly crescendo to the next note or rest, unless you want to end it softly. That's why it's up to you. If you want to do something that's a decrescendo, make sure we can hear the decrescendo as well. Text accents, regardless of pitch or interval direction, right? So it's still ave verum corpus shenando. What, regardless of where those unaccented syllables go, they're still unaccented. I'm going to give you an example. Text accents in the context of a phrase. All right. So here's an example. This is a piece I wrote that Alfred published a long time ago. I did it with the Australian National Choral Association or something. I just closed my 2 middle school Carnegie Hall concerts in May 2019. Seems like more than 2 years ago. But look at this. I wrote this, so you can blame me. But look where the second syllable is on music. How do we say music? Music. We don't say music, right? And along, that's pretty good. It is along, so along has got the higher note. But a lot of times, if it's higher, they sing it louder. For the love of music, we sing this song. Okay, beautiful. So how do we make music out of that? Well, the second syllable of music has to be dramatically softer. For the love of music. And guess what? Where's the long note? Remember we talked about long notes crescendo? The long note's on the unaccented syllable of music, isn't it? Huh. Gives us a perfect opportunity to crescendo. You can sing this with me if you'd like. For the love of music, we sing this song. Got the idea? Song crescendo too? What? That's what musicians do. That's why we're making musicians out of them, okay? For the love of music, come sing along. Got the idea? Enough, let's move it. I love this little picture. I know we're a choral session, but that's the trombone section from the New York Philharmonic. Joe Alessi, the lead trombone on the left. But here's a classic example of a conductor saying nothing to them. Sound like the heavens are opening. Humanity crying with joy. Okay. Or I remember in the recording studio, somebody in the booth saying, can you do that again with more feeling? I said, you know what? I gave it all the feeling I had the last time. What do you want? Loud, soft, crescendo, accent at the beginning of the note? Also, just want to talk about conducting here a little bit. One of the things I've told choirs from the very beginning. So those Carnegie Hall concerts, I had 2 4-hour rehearsals with each of the choirs, the first half choir, second half choir. 225 in each one. Scary, but I loved it. I said, here's the deal. If you want to get the attention, the purpose of a conductor is to bring attention to the choir, not attention to me. If I have to go, guess what? They're looking at me doing calisthenics. Weston Noble, Luther College. Some of you may know him. I just did a Zoom thing for the Luther College kids. I'm going to see if I can get this where you can see it. His piano was here. His forte was here. And everything was in between. Now, when you're rehearsing a piece first, you're going to have to be a little more dramatic. But what happens? What does it look like behind you? What is the audience seeing? They're seeing the choir. It's transparent. Rene Clausen's another one. If you ever watched Rene Clausen, he is absolutely transparent. Nobody looks at Rene Clausen. They hear the beauty of that Concordia choir. Be the role model in the classroom. For some reason I can't read. Oh, I can move this thing. Okay. Be the adult and the role model in the classroom. I've got my screen share that's doing things here. Okay. Show up early, even on Zoom. Teaching, learning starts on time. You're the role model. My two F's, these used to be test questions. I still have people go, I remember that test question. What's Robinson's two F? Be friendly and be fair. You know, nobody wants to be some goody two shoes not called down for doing something bad. You have to be fair, and you have to walk in and be friendly. You have to act every time they come through the door. Act like it's going to be a great day. What is teaching? A lot of teaching is acting. You know, whenever you got out of college, you have very well trained, whether you're from my place or whatever, but you still weren't ready to teach. Everybody remembers that first year. What did you do? You acted like you knew what you were doing. And in 3 or 4 years, you get it figured out a little bit. Show emotional control. Anybody's been teaching a while, have you ever lost it in class? Yeah, but you don't want to do that too long. You don't want to do it too many times. What does it do? It brings down your credibility. You have the emotional control. Students are a reflection of you. All right. So if we are excited and if we're ready to start this class, they're going to be excited and ready. Most of them. And those, if there's a few that aren't, that's where you use accurate reinforcement to get them on the ball. If there are behavior problems, musical or otherwise, the point here is we really control everything. Good teachers control everything from the time they walk in the classroom till the time they leave. Now, is that in the first 2 or 3 weeks? Is that what you want them to be like? No, but you can't wait till day, what are you at now? I mean, day 160 and 180 day school year and whatever. Otherwise, they control it. I've been in classrooms where the students are controlling what's going on in the classroom. It's not a good way to live. Be a leader. You may be the only role model some of these kids have. I know some of you may be shaking your heads. They come to school from very disparate, I'm not desperate, disparate circumstances. And many of you have become the role model for them. Yeah, that's about teaching in terms they understand. You can see that. Yeah. Talk less, make music more. A lot of classrooms I've observed. If you did a videotape, if you did a video, we don't videotape anymore. And I'd ask you to do this if you want to get on your game with this. And I've done it with myself. I've had students video the class, and then we take a behavioral check and say, how much of that 50-minute class was on task music learning and on task making music? And how much of that class was talk or wasted time? I've seen some where it was 80% off task and 20% on. We need to reverse those and just do a little behavioral check. Here's we're on task and here we're not. Okay. Let's go on here. There you go. 1 or 2 reinforcers and back to the music. That's why they're in music, is to do music. Students are in music, do music, not listen to us talk, philosophize, pontificate, or rant. Okay. We have so much to do in our classes that we haven't got any time to do that. Okay. All right. How we doing? Strategies in COVID. We're almost done. All right. So some of you are in class, some of you are hybrid, some of you are remote. I think most of you are, my friend from one of these schools, when I worked with them in January, they've been remote since March, but I think we're emerging. Some of you are in class. Some of you maybe have been in class the whole year. They can become better individual musicians. I think that's an advantage, if there is an advantage. What happens when we're all in the same place together? The followers follow the leaders, we hope. And the followers end up still being followers. When they're responsible for their own musical production, singing, whatever, would you sing on this block here, this? It puts, you can make some musicians with this. Collaborations with other musicians. These are two that you may or may not be familiar with, but these are where you can actually have somebody in one town and another town, or in the band room and at home, and make music at the same time, but it's kind of expensive. I've got an example of that. Jason Schuster is a name I hope you'll remember. He's just a great guy. And I'd like to play just a clip of his when I show the rest of these, Michaela. Singing with masks on and socially distanced. Multiple technology for virtual choirs. I've got an example here of a virtual choir singing Standing in the Light of Love. I've got another one of that same choir doing a hybrid, some in class, some remote, on a virtual choir. So these are the tools they're using besides singing into the cell phone with a click track. So let's, if we can, I'll go off screen share, and if you could play just a small clip of Jason Schuster, please. This guy's an unbelievable musician. He's in, where is he? He's in Thailand. He's in the US. Okay, that's enough. Let's go, if we can, just real quickly to this Tuxedo Junction. I want them to see that. Because this is in class and remote, and then we're done. So these kids are in class. This just came out last week. You can find it on YouTube. But you're going to have the links tomorrow. Okay, got the idea? So the other thing is, you can cut that. And you can give me back my screen. So the good news is, but when you get this, these copies, I would actually, let me go back. I'd love for you to check out this North Carolina Master Chorale. Actually, Andy Beck sings in that choir. They're doing socially distanced in a parking lot with masks on. All right, so we've got all these technologies, and I hope you can take some of them back. But the good news is, according to all the reports, 95% of you are going to be back in the classroom this fall, if you're not already. So ready or not, they're coming back. And that's good news, isn't it? We'd all applaud. Okay, what were those 5 strategies? You remember? Here it is. Here's some of my DVDs that talk about these topics. That's just kind of the same thing as what I talked about, only different. And now we're ready for questions. Let's do it.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we don't have any questions right now in the Q&A box, so I'm going to tell everyone this is your final chance. Drop any questions in. Though I do have a few comments that I want to go over in just a second here. While we're waiting for those questions to come in, I'm going to be dropping a few links for you all in the chat. We have the resource link slide from Dr. Robinson. It has the links to all of those videos in there. Go ahead and take that link, download the PDF, and check those out.
Oh, wonderful.
We also have the certificate of attendance for today's session in the chat, and then also a survey for today's session. You can download that and do what you will with it. I do have a couple of comments that came in the chat that I wanted to mention. So I think it's Chenin is how you say it, said this year, administration is asking us to give a 50% to 70% for students who are earning a 0% in the class. I'm worried about reinforcing that or not doing anything at all. I wanted to know if you have any comments or response to that.
Well, you know, it's a very trying time. And you know, a lot of people, everything is about numbers, and not everybody wants accurate numbers, unfortunately. So, you know, to specifically ask for grade inflation, you know, I think everybody ought to make an A in music. They start with an A when they start, you know, they start at 100%. Uh, and so for me, uh, when I was doing my grading, if they did everything we did in class, they got an A. But you had to do stuff, you know, and everybody knew what their grade was before I ever put them out. And nobody told me that, you know, everybody's got to have 70% or above. I mean, you know, if they haven't done anything, that's what we call reinforcement error. That's the purpose of what I'm talking about today. So that's a tough deal. I hate to see that happen, but I guess it's happening.
All right, another question came in. My district just switched to block schedules this year. I found my middle school groups have struggled after an hour into rehearsal. Do you have any suggestions to keep them engaged during the longer rehearsals?
Yeah, you know what? I've been battling with block scheduling since the think tank in Baltimore. You know what happens is these administrators, and I mean, I love administrators. I just took the superintendent to lunch last week from here, and but I think I was very involved in decisions in our district. But what happens is they all meet together without teacher input. Teachers are in the trenches, and the administrators meet, and they make this stuff up. And I love administrators that have their heart in the right place. But that's how in block scheduling happened. That if we do block scheduling, then we can do this on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and do this on Tuesday, Thursday, and we get, you know, time off for good behavior with the English and science teachers when we do it in a block, because they can have them work on all their problems, you know, in class. Am I getting too real here? Probably. I hope so. But in chorus classes, you know, you can't keep college students' attention for 90 minutes, you know? So I think you have to have activities that are different. And this is where I think this was a middle school teacher. What? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think what I would do is I'd have that so structured that there were places where it didn't have to be structured. So let's say we're gonna really do it for 40 minutes. We're gonna do our physical work. We're gonna do our warm-ups. We're gonna do a rehearsal on this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece. Okay. All right. So you still got 50 minutes, and then at that point we're gonna have some projects to do. I'm into songwriting in the classroom. I've got 2 books. I got one with Alfred called "Songwriting Made Easy." That's step by step how you write a song, and it has nothing to do with perfect fourths and fifths and common practice theory. You know, it's like you've got 3 ways to do that. You either write the melody first, or or you have the chords first, or chords, melody, and I can't remember the other one. Whatever. And you put them in groups, and so every student in that class had to have a song that they'd written for presentation by the end of the semester. And they could work in groups, but they had to actively play, or they had to actively sing. So yeah, you have to have a time of something totally different, I think, especially when it's happening every time, to give them a little break and then back to it. So I hope that helps you, but I feel your pain. And I have no doubt that you can keep everybody's attention for 90 minutes, but I think I'd rather have one thing at the beginning and maybe 10 or 20, 10 or 15 minutes of another on task musical activity, and then finish up with another one, with another rehearsal of music, another choral rehearsal.
All right, I have 2 questions from Brian. We'll start with the first one. I'm worried about my incoming sixth graders who have never experienced chorus because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
Do you have any attention grabbers or advice to get started?
Yeah, just get them singing from the first day. Do some unison fun things. Uh, uh, you know, you don't have to part sing on day one. Have them do some rounds and cannons. I mean, I've been writing a bunch of rounds, and those that can be a part of the warm up too. But some fun stuff. And you can look that up on whoever your favorite vendor is. But you could go to JW Pepper and say, give me unison rounds and cannons, and then look at the text and make sure it's fun. It's not talking about something dark and deep. To get them hooked in singing, do some call and response. Let's all sing together. Let's all sing together. How is it the weather? How is it? I mean, just be the musician you are, and they're gonna love it. Prior experience coming into sixth grade, that's not a requirement, really. You know, what I worry about are as well are the 10th and 11th graders that haven't had anything in class and they come back for their senior year, or vice versa.
All right. Next one is, what are some tried and true ideas for choosing three-part versus SAB?
Ah, good question. Well, I might ask you the question. Is that Brian question? Did you get two of them, Brian?
Yes,
Oh,
that's
you
Brian.
you got two questions, Brian. That's good. Well, here's three-part mixed. I think was invented. There are rules for three-part mixed. I have a lot of three-part mixed out there. So the difference is, I don't know if you know the difference, but when I ask a group, what's the difference between three-part mix and SAB? A lot of people can't answer that question. But the answer is three-part mix is a limited range, and it goes from for the baritones, let's say, which goes from F to D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very seldom does any three-part mix break that rule. Why? It's an industry standard. It's kind of like MIDI. It's called musical instrument digital interface. You can't call it anything else. Three-part mix for everybody, all of my colleagues in the business, I could name them all, but they're all friends, is a 6-note range. Why? Because if you've got beginning middle school baritones, they're not going to have a full octave range. It kind of handles those that have changed a little bit, but not the ones perhaps that went from before Thanksgiving, hello, Mr. Smith, and they came back after Thanksgiving, hello, Mr. Smith. So, those voices change pretty dramatically. But the SAB, fortunately or unfortunately, can be anywhere. Most of us will not write below a B flat, below middle C, an octave, or a C below middle C. Most of us don't write any lower than that for SAB. We can still write up to a C or a D above middle C. But it does accommodate those whose voices have changed more. And it's also, when I write SAB, I'll tell you what I do. I write it thinking about 9th and 10th grade choirs. It's hard enough to get the guys or the baritones on one note, one part. Sopranos and altos, they seem to go to parts better, faster. The other thing you can do, Brian, you didn't ask this question, is on a 2-part piece, on a SA piece, you can have the sopranos sing the soprano part, the altos sing the alto part, and the baritones sing the soprano part most of the time down an octave. So you've got a unison thing going on. The reason I say that is when people write, they usually write the melody because it's going to be the melody. The alto part is a harmony part. And I've seen choirs that put the alto part down an octave and it's ugly. Soprano where they are, altos where they are, baritones on the soprano part down the octave. And you know what? Your audiences aren't going to go, oh, they were singing that soprano part down the octave. They're not going to know. They're going to think it's an SAB piece. And how much fun for the baritones to be able to have somebody else singing their part, the soprano. It's a good trick and it works and it gets the hook in them. That's another thing for middle school. You can do that in middle school, and the baritones are getting to sing with somebody else, the sopranos. So it works for me.
All right, I have a question from Kira. What are your thoughts or strategies on teaching 6th to 8th grade students who are being forced to participate in choir? Because of scheduling, all students must take either band or chorus for the year. And often students who do not want to perform at all go to chorus because they don't have to rent an instrument. This leads to a lot of behavior issues because there are students who simply don't want to be there.
Yeah. And if you listen to that, the choir on your sheet, I would suggest you listen to the Lincoln and Howard Bishop Middle School choirs doing Standing in the Light of Love and Tuxedo Junction. I don't know if Jackie Collins is on this meeting, but that's exactly what she has. It's like, I used to call it the dumping ground, when choir becomes the dumping ground. They just, if they can't go anywhere else, they go to choir. But I tell you what, you get a hook in them. And if they start enjoying it, that's why you have to be really careful about what pieces you do. You might do some pop pieces. You might do a lot of unison. You might do some with CD accompaniment. All of our publishers are doing CD accompaniment, so you can, still help them out. Do some fun stuff. And then without them knowing it, go into some better stuff, perhaps. Teaching, I found, is fooling students. I don't mean that in a bad way. Fooling students into doing the right thing, and they have no idea what you did. They just know what the result is. You're leading them there. You don't have to explain everything. You pick a fun piece to start with, maybe 2 or 3 fun pieces, so you're not doing all 3 of them the whole period, and have them sing with the recording. We've got full play recordings on these things, and then take the recording of the vocals out and have them do it with the accompaniment. But I feel for you, but you're not alone. I would imagine on this webinar, there are other people and I had it done to me. My first choir, because I was a trumpet player. My first job was to be with this great band director, who's still a great, he went on from there to be at Oberlin. I went on from there to be at University of Florida. But they said, you got to do middle school jazz band, sixth grade band, and high school choir with 17 people in it that don't have any place to go. And the previous person had and I just got them all having fun and singing music. And by the time I left 6 years later, that we had 150 in the choral program of a school of 450. We had the football players and the cheerleaders and everybody, but you got to start with what you have. If you can make that class have some fun, and I mean fun in a musical way, and all of a sudden that light goes on, that, hey, we're making music. We just took this class because we thought it was going to be easy and we didn't have to play an instrument. And I wish you all the best. By the way, I want to tell all of you, in case I forget, if you have any questions at a later time, don't hesitate to contact me at russellrobinson.com. That's got all my stuff. I don't sell anything on it, but it's got my music and it's got, pictures of stuff and kind of my professional life. But on the contact page, you just hit the contact thing. And my webmaster, who's been my webmaster for 15 years, he started with me when he was 16, now lives in Oregon. I live in Florida. But he got that, I was getting all this weird stuff. And he put those CAPTCHA things, where you got to, before you submit it, you got to tell them what the squiggly lines mean. And now I get no spam at all. And just put in the reference line, the subject line, I was with you at the Alfred webinar. And then I know it's real. So I just wanted to let you know that this doesn't stop here with me. I get these all the time. And I want to tell you something. They say Arnold Palmer answered every letter that people wrote him. And I answer everything that comes through my website, comes to my private email. I answer everyone that comes through there because I figure if they're wanting to get my take on something, who am I to say no? So feel free.
And I dropped that address, russellrobinson.com, into our chat for you guys to click on as well. I have a question from Teresa, and I know we're coming to the end here, so we got to start working quick. What are good ways to incorporate theory or composition into the middle school rehearsal and keep it interesting for the students?
Yeah. I think if they learn composition, if they learn how to write songs and you can do that. I'm not trying to sell anything on this, but that songwriting made easy. I've got a copy of it here. 1 second. I'll find it before we're done. I think I have it. All right, here. No. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. This is published by Alfred. It's called Songwriting Made Easy. And you write, it's just a step by step. They can write from melody. They can come up with a tune in the head and start that, and it comes into a song. We just want to sing for you, whatever. And you're going to have to help them with, but they're going to love it. And from melody, from poetry to song. So a fly and a flea and a flew were in prison. So what could they do? Said the fly, let us flee. Said the flea, let us fly. So we flew through the flaw and the flew. A fly and a flea and a flew were in prison. So what did they do? Whatever. Or from chorus to song. Because that's if you've got some instruments or you got somebody that can play guitar or play piano or play cajon, whatever, and have them do some of that. And then the final project, that's why you get them hooked with that. The final project is they have to write that song in lead sheet format. What does that mean? One line of management, one line of staff. They write the melody. They figure out what the rhythm is. They put it underneath, and then they put the chords on it. And that's the way I think you should learn theory in middle school. Not go, okay, we're going to start with the major scale. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whatever, because whatever you do to teach them about music, make sure it's with music. So they sing it, whatever. Because that can get boring pretty fast. And you can even sing the scales with them, as you play the piano or whatever. But and there's another music theory great series. I think it's called Alfred Music Theory. But Andy Beck and Karen Sermani have a great series, and they're sequential, and they have accompaniment. So when they sing, a perfect fourth, it sounds fun without just saying perfect fourth. Anyway, thank you all so much.
We are right at the end here. So I know that there are a couple more questions in here, but again, I dropped that link to Russell's Dr. Robinson's website on our chat here. So go ahead and click on that link and feel free to message him there if there are any questions that you wanted him to address specifically. I am going to drop the link for the resource link slide back into the chat here for you guys to reference. And I want to thank you so much, Dr. Robinson, for being here with us today, for giving us so many, the strategies, the advice, and running through so many questions and helping so many of us. And thank you for being with us today. And everyone, have a wonderful afternoon. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful preparing for this and working with you, Michaela. She is great, and Andy Beck, but I can't thank you enough, Michaela. If it was positive and good, you get a lot of credit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Keep in touch.